The night the sky fell was not meant for heroes. It was meant for survivors. And on the shattered moon of Valix 3, a young human medic named Evan Cole was trying to be both. He moved through the smoke and fire of the ruined colony, his boots crunching over glassed stone, his breath echoing inside the cracked faceplate of his helmet. Every sound was drowned by the low thunder of collapsing towers, and the static cry of alien children trapped beneath the wreckage. The pirates had come fast, no warning, no mercy, scavenging the outer worlds for slaves and metals. He was not supposed to be here. The medship had been rerouted to a diplomatic zone, but Evan had stayed behind when the evacuation order came, because he could not leave screams unanswered. He found a child curled near a fallen generator, her skin pale violet, her hair silver like starlight caught in water. Small crystalline horns marked her as Valixian. Barely 10 years old by human measure, she trembled when his shadow fell over her, her eyes wide and wet, fixed on the strange figure in armor. He crouched slowly, switched off the blue glare of his helmet light, and held out a bare hand. His voice softened through the static. "Easy there, it's all right, I'm here to help," she hesitated, eyes flicking toward the burning horizon, then back to him. Her lips moved around the human tongue awkwardly. "You are monster." Evan gave a tired laugh. "Not far from the truth, kid, come on. Monsters don't give you chocolate." He broke a ration bar and held it out. She blinked, sniffed it, and whispered her name, Leary. He smiled. "Leary, that's a good name, mine's Evan, we're going to get you home." He carried her through the ruins as ash fell like dark snow. Around them, the last of the pirate ships lifted away, chased by distant flashes from orbit. The medship's engines hummed above. Promising safety, Leary clung to his neck, silent but trembling. Halfway up the ramp, she turned her face toward the smoking village below. Her whisper barely reached him. "They took my mother." Evan felt her tears on his glove, and something in him hardened. He looked at the soldiers guarding the ramp and said, "We'll find her, that's a promise." Leary looked up, eyes too old for her small face, and asked in the broken rhythm of her people, "Promises forever?" "Yes," Evan nodded, "forever." She studied him for a long heartbeat and then asked, "When I grow, you come back, you be my husband, so no one hurt me." The soldiers nearby chuckled softly. The pilot even snorted over the comms. Evan smiled to ease her fear and said lightly, "Sure thing, kid, when you grow up, I'll come back and marry you, deal?" She straightened, tiny chin lifted with royal pride he didn't understand. "Deal," she whispered, her hand glowing faintly as she pressed her fingers to his wrist. A faint shimmer marked his skin like dusted light. Evan felt a strange warmth pulse once through his veins. But before he could speak, the medship doors sealed. Hours later, in the silence of orbit, Evan watched Valix 3 shrink beneath him. He replayed her last words in his mind and laughed softly. It was just a way to make a scared kid smile. But somewhere in the black of space, that shimmer on his wrist pulsed again before fading. Years passed like whispers. The war with the pirate syndicates ended. The Galactic Council expanded. And Evan rose through the ranks of the Terran Expeditionary Corps. Medals gathered, scars too. But some nights he dreamed of a silver-eyed girl staring at him through smoke. He never went back. Duty kept him moving from one broken world to another then. On an ordinary morning aboard the carrier HSS Vantage, an encrypted message appeared on his private console. It carried no insignia, just an old village seal from Valix 3. Inside was a single line in alien script and one human translation beneath it. By vow of moonfire and witness stone, the promise is due. Attached was a hologram, faint, static-filled, yet unmistakable. A grown woman with silver hair braided in ribbons of light, a mark of royal lineage on her brow. She stood before a council emblem and said softly, "Captain Evan Cole, by the law of Valix, your vow has reached its time. My world stands on the edge of extinction, and the stars remember what was sworn." He replayed the clip twice, then again the bridge lights reflected on his pale face. Every part of him wanted to laugh it off as a prank. But deep inside, something cold twisted with memory. He checked the message source, verified it. The coordinates were real. The law she invoked was old, older than the council itself in Valix culture. Vows spoken under fire and witnessed by the dying sky became binding truths once both lives endured. They called it the law of destiny, outside the viewport. The stars burned quietly, indifferent. Evan rubbed his wrist where the faint shimmer had once been. It was gone, but his pulse quickened as if it remembered. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the hologram paused mid-frame, her face solemn, proud, and familiar. He whispered to no one, "Leary, what have you done?" Behind him, the hum of the ship's engines deepened. A courier drone waited for command orders. Evan's mind swirled between duty and the strange ache in his chest. The message had been sent across light years through a secure diplomatic net. Not just a personal request, it carried the authority of a ruling house. He thought of that terrified child clutching his neck, of the promise he made in the smoke, of the soldiers laughing. Now a grown princess had called it back from the past, and the galaxy itself seemed ready to judge if a human joke could become an alien law. Evan sighed, looking once more at her image frozen mid-breath, and whispered into the empty cabin, "I guess a promise is forever after all." The stars outside blinked like waiting eyes. The universe held its breath, and destiny quietly turned its face toward him. The journey to Valix Prime began with silence, not the kind born of peace, but the heavy silence that follows a decision that can no longer be undone. Captain Evan Cole stood alone in the drop bay of the human cruiser HSS Vantage, staring at the faint glow of his shuttle's console. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched in endless black. Somewhere beyond them waited a world that still remembered a promise he had tried to forget. When the engines flared and the stars bent into lines, he closed his eyes and saw her again, the little girl under firelight, the silver hair tangled with ash, the trembling voice that asked him to stay. It had been years, wars, metals, and ghosts since then, yet her words still reached him like a thread unbroken by time. He had faced warlords and admirals, but the thought of seeing her again filled him with something far stranger than fear. As the shuttle descended through Valix's atmosphere, the clouds burned with crystal light. This world was unlike any human planet. The air shimmered with fragments of mineral dust, each particle reflecting the system's twin suns. Cities rose like towers of glass and coral. Floating bridges arched over oceans that glowed from within. The beauty of it carried an echo of sadness, because beneath the shimmer he could see the scars of war. Collapsed domes, dry seabeds, broken energy lines still bleeding faint light into the sea. Landing protocol was silent, only 2 escorts met him, their armor etched with the sigil of the royal house. They bowed with perfect formality and said, "The princess awaits." Their tone was neither warm nor hostile, only distant, the kind of distance that hides judgment. Evan followed through vast marble halls, alien architecture twisting like vines frozen mid-bloom. Each step echoed, every sound felt watched. The throne chamber opened like a cathedral of light, crystal panels towering to the ceiling, and there she stood. Not the frightened child he remembered, but a woman crowned by her people's sorrow and strength. Her silver hair braided with blue strands of mourning, her eyes bright yet shadowed by long nights. Leery of Valix. Princess by blood, survivor by will. When she looked at him, the years between them vanished. Her voice was soft but steady. "You came." Evan tried to speak, but the words caught somewhere between apology and disbelief. He managed. "Your message left me little choice." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurts more than tears, then said, "My world has no choice either." She led him to the balcony overlooking the capital, where he saw fleets anchored above the sky, alien ships marked with council insignia. Their presence looked peaceful, but every beam of light from them was a blade waiting to fall. Lyrie spoke quietly. "The council calls it partition law. They claim we are unsafe, that our oceans and cores must be secured for universal balance. What they mean is they will take everything that still breathes." Evan frowned. "The council never interferes with sovereign systems." She met his eyes and said, "Not unless a loophole allows it." "And you, Captain Cole, are that loophole?" Her advisors joined them, tall and severe, robes flowing like shadowed glass. One held an ancient scroll. He unrolled it and read in the tone of ritual. Under moonfire and witness stone, one promise was made between a human and the heir of Valix. By our law, such a vow carries royal weight if both survive the storm. The alien counselor looked at Evan with eyes like ice. "You made a binding promise before our gods. By law of this world you are pledged." Evan stared at them. Disbelief written across his face, that was a child's comfort. "I never meant for it to be real." Lyrie turned away, her gaze toward the horizon where the twin suns sank. "Meaning is not chosen," she said, "in our faith. The stars choose it for us, and the stars have already answered." He followed her into the council chamber, maps projected across the air, showing red lines of invasion forming around their system. Pirate fleets flying council. Registration codes, settlements disappearing one by one. She explained that once partition passed, Valix's oceans would be drained, its people moved to labor colonies. Her voice trembled only once when she added, "They want me to abdicate and end the royal line." If I do, no treaty can protect us, but if you honor your vow, the ancient pact with Earth will activate. Human presence forbids forced annexation. One ceremony can save millions. Evan looked at her long and hard, trying to find the child he remembered, but she was gone, replaced by someone who had carried an empire on her shoulders. He finally said, and if I refuse, she met his gaze, then my people will die under the law you once spoke into being. The silence that followed was heavier than any battlefield he had stood upon. He turned to the window where the council ships glowed faintly above the atmosphere, like waiting predators. This was no fantasy, no sentimental memory. This was politics wrapped in faith, and his name had become the pivot of a dying world. Lyri stepped closer, her voice softer now. I do not ask for love, I ask for help. The vow can be symbolic. One night of ceremony, it binds the treaty. Then you may go back to your command, free and honored. Evan looked at her hands clasped tightly together, saw the faint scars at her wrists, marks of past restraints, of survival. He wanted to believe it could be that simple. But something deep inside whispered that destiny never settles for symbols. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, lightning tracing the fleet's shadow. The air hummed with energy from orbital engines preparing for descent. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his answer. He felt the pulse in his wrist again. Faint, like the memory of light that once marked him long ago. The warmth spread slowly through his veins. Not painful, just real. He turned back to her and said quietly, if I do this, if I honor this vow, I need to know you understand what it means to humans. Where we come from, promises aren't made to bind, they're made to protect. Lyri nodded, eyes glistening like polished glass. Then protect us, Captain. Not with weapons, but with your word. Evan looked once more at the horizon of Valix, its seas glowing faintly in the dark, the wind carrying strange songs through the halls. He thought of how small she had been, how fierce her voice had sounded in the smoke, and how this moment felt like the end of something, and the beginning of something greater. He drew a slow breath. The stars outside pulsed with unseen rhythm, and he whispered, all right, princess, let's see what a promise is worth. The guards bowed, the court lights dimmed, and in the distant void above, the council fleets turned slowly, as if the universe itself had heard his words and was waiting for the next move. The storm of destiny had begun, and neither human law nor alien faith could stop it now. The night before the ceremony, the city of Valix Prime slept under a veil of stormlight. Thunder rolled across the twin suns' fading glow, and lightning carved rivers of gold across the glass towers. Evan stood alone on the balcony of his guest chamber. The alien sky reflected on his armor like a shifting sea. He could see the royal citadel far below, a living monument of crystal and coral, and beyond it, the silent orbit of council warships watching everything. The air felt charged with something more than electricity. It felt like fate gathering its strength. He had faced battles that tore moons apart. Yet his hands trembled as he adjusted the small ceremonial clasp Lyri had sent him. It was made from woven starlight threads, a sign of unity. He still could not believe he was about to stand before an alien court and swear himself into a vow that had started as a joke. He had tried to sleep, but dreams came instead, fragments of the past mixing with the sound of Lyri's voice, soft, calm, and unyielding. He kept asking himself what would happen once it was done. Would Earth stand by him, or turn its back for the sake of neutrality? A soft chime sounded and the door opened. Lyri stepped inside without guards. Her gown shimmered with flowing light, and her hair fell loose down her back. Her expression was calm, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. She said quietly, the storm will pass by dawn. The stars will be clear for the vow. Evan nodded, his voice low. I've fought through storms before. This one feels different. She moved closer, her gaze following his out to the lightning. It is different. This one decides whether my people live or fade. He turned toward her, and for a moment neither spoke. The silence carried more than words could. Lyri finally said, the council will not accept this easily. Marshal Varketh has already called it manipulation. He says humans seek control through vows and law. Evan frowned. Who is Keth? Her voice darkened. The man who commands the fleets above us. He funds pirates, burns worlds, and then arrives as savior. The council believes him because his wars fill their trade routes. Evan's jaw tightened. I've met men like him before. They build peace from ashes they made themselves. Later that night, Evan met with Maya Ortiz, a human intelligence officer stationed as a diplomatic observer. She had served under him years ago, and her first words were a whisper. You're walking into a trap, Captain, he replied without turning. I've been in traps before, she shook her head. This one isn't made of guns, it's made of laws. We intercepted a transmission. Keth's fleet isn't just here for partition. He's testing the new drone foundries in the Black Nebula, synthetic fleets that don't need crews. He plans to provoke a rebellion, then use it to justify annexing the entire sector. Evan looked down at the projection she handed him. Endless strings of coded deployments, ghost signals, fake distress calls, and hidden mines. It all painted a single truth. Valix was not a victim of policy. It was bait, he asked. Why hasn't Earth intervened? Maya's laugh was bitter. Because they don't want another interstellar war. They'll wait until there's proof. And by then this planet will be dust. Evan leaned back, the weight of the galaxy pressing on his chest. At dawn, the storm cleared. The twin suns rose over the glass towers, painting them in gold and violet. The air smelled of ozone and salt. The palace courtyards filled with silent witnesses, nobles, guards, and soldiers who had lost more than they could say. The ceremony was not loud. It was hauntingly quiet. Ancient music hummed through the crystal halls, slow and heavy, every note vibrating like memory. Evan walked beside Leary down the long aisle of light. His armor traded for a formal black coat stitched with silver threads. His hand brushed the pulse of his wrist, still faintly warm from that old shimmer. Larry's gown flowed behind her like a wave of light. When they reached the altar of stars, 2 witness stones hovered in the air. Ancient relics said to sense truth. Priests chanted in low tones, asking the heavens to record what words alone could not. When it was time to speak, Leary turned to him and said softly, "You once gave me hope when I was a child. I never forgot that. I stand before you not as a princess but as that same soul, believing still that promises have power." Evan swallowed hard, and his voice came steady though his heart thundered. "I made a vow to protect even if it was born in fire and fear. I keep it now not for law or politics but because I cannot stand aside while the strong destroy the innocent." The witness stones pulsed with bright white light. The chamber filled with a sound like distant thunder, and the priest murmured, "Truth confirmed." The audience bowed their heads, some in reverence, some in disbelief. In that moment, the stars themselves seemed to hold still. And then the stones shifted again. Glowing with a deep blue flame, Leary's voice echoed softly. "The stars have answered far above in orbit." Varketh watched the broadcast with cold eyes. His aide turned to him. "The vow is sealed. Shall we proceed?" Keth smiled thinly. "Proceed, yes, but not as they expect. Activate the drones at the spiral reefs. Let's test how loyal this human soldier really is." Down on the planet, alarms shattered the ceremony's peace. Officers rushed in, whispering reports of explosions near the sea colonies. Evan's instincts took over before the priests finished their final blessing. He looked at Lyrie, already moving toward the command balcony. She didn't hesitate, neither did he. Within minutes they were airborne in a royal skiff racing toward the coast, the blue oceans burning beneath them. Evan stared out the viewport as swarms of metallic drones rose from the horizon like a black storm, their reflections glittering in the sunlight. His communicator crackled with Maya's voice. "It's Keth. He's triggering attacks to make you break the treaty. If you fight, the council can call you a violator. If you don't, the people die." Evan's jaw set. "Then we save them anyway. We'll show them what it means when a human keeps his promise." The skiff dove into the chaos. Explosions lit the clouds. Lyrie at his side, her eyes fierce. The witness stone's glow still faintly visible against her wrist. Evan gripped the control rail, his heart pounding with rage and fear and something deeper he couldn't name. The vow had become real, and with it came war above the world. The council fleets turned their guns away from the horizon and toward Valix itself, waiting to see if the human would break his own law. And below, amid storm and fire, Evan Cole prepared to show the galaxy what a promise truly meant. The next battle would not decide love or politics. It would decide who owned the truth, and who would write the next law of the stars. The sea was burning, waves of blue fire rippling across the shattered reefs as Evan's skiff tore through the smoke. The engines screamed against the pressure of the storm. Lightning lanced across the clouds, and in every flash he could see the shadow of drones rising from the depths like a swarm of metal ghosts. They came in silence, thousands of them, wings folding and unfolding like black petals under a dead sun. Lyrie stood beside him in the cockpit, her hands trembling over the control sphere. The glow from the instrument panels painted her face in pale silver. Her voice was steady but soft. "There are children hiding in the caverns below the reefs. We sealed them there when the alarm sounded." Evan didn't hesitate. "Then that's where we go." He keyed his comm to the human platoon riding behind them in drop sleds. "All units, target the swarm clusters, draw them away from the caverns." Don't waste shots, we're not here for kills. We're here to buy time. The sleds broke formation and dove, small trails of white light slicing through the sky. Their coil rifles spat arcs of burning plasma. Drone carcasses rained down like steel rain. The ocean hissed with smoke and blood. Evan watched his soldiers move like ghosts. Disciplined, relentless, every motion precise. They were human, fragile compared to these machines. Yet in the chaos they looked like the true predators of this war. Leary's eyes widened as she saw one sled vanish in a fireball. She whispered a word in her language that Evan didn't know but understood. Loss? He could hear the cries over the open comm, broken voices calling out names that would never answer. He clenched his jaw, anger rising. This was no test. This was slaughter disguised as order. Keth had planned every frame of it. He wanted the human to break, to strike first, to give the council reason to erase them. When they reached the spiral reefs, the world seemed to turn inside out. The seafloor had risen in great plates of molten glass. The sky turned crimson with burning fuel. The caverns lay hidden under the eastern ridge, but the entrances were blocked by falling debris. Evan saw the faint flashes of distress beacons under the waves. He turned to Lyrie. I'm going down. She shook her head. The pressure will crush you. Evan gave a grim smile. We're used to worse. He strapped on the deep pressure suit, sealed his helmet, and before diving he looked back at her once more. Stay with the skiff. If it gets worse, leave. She met his gaze fiercely. No, I swore to stand beside you. Remember, the stars chose this vow. Not me, not you. He couldn't argue. He only nodded and dove into the dark. The water was thick with ash and oil. His suit lights cut narrow tunnels through the gloom. He followed the beacons deeper, the hum of his rebreather echoing like a heartbeat. Then through the murk he saw it, a collapsed tunnel mouth glowing faintly from within. The sensors picked up faint movement. Survivors trapped under fallen coral. He gripped a beam, pushing with everything his suit could give. Metal groaned, rock shifted, then broke. A burst of air and bubbles exploded upward. Small figures floated out, fragile and trembling. Children wrapped in thin survival veils. Leary's voice crackled through the comm. Evan, I have them on visual. 24 alive. More signals further in. Hurry. The swarm is turning back. He didn't need the warning. He could already feel the tremor of explosions rippling through the water. He pulled the last child out, handed her to Leary's waiting hands at the surface, and turned just in time to see a massive drone break through the waves, its body gleaming like a blade. It opened a bay beneath its frame and released smaller drones. Insect-like and fast, Evan shouted over the comm. Pull back now. But the wind tore his voice apart. Leary's corvette swooped low. Weapons lighting up the night, she fired in sweeping arcs, shredding the smaller machines, but one broke through and slammed into her hull. The ship lurched sideways, alarms wailed. She steadied it with one hand and kept firing with the other. Her calm was terrifying and beautiful all at once. Evan climbed back onto the skiff, soaked, armor steaming. The rescued children huddled at the rear. Eyes wide with fear, he shouted, Maya, status. Her voice came through the static. Heavy losses, half the sleds gone, but we've held the drones back. The council ships are watching and doing nothing. Evan stared up at the sky, where those massive vessels hung like gods judging from afar. He could almost feel Keth's eyes behind them, amused, waiting for him to slip. The sea roared again, louder this time, and from the horizon came something worse. A carrier ship rising from the depths, black and immense. Water falling from its hull like rain. It was Keth's. Evan could see the insignia glowing red on its prow. The ship began deploying atmospheric torpedoes. Each one a miniature sun. Leary looked at him, horror dawning. He's going to burn the reefs. Evan shook his head. Not if I can help it. He pulled open the skiff's control panel and rerouted the reactor charge. She realized what he was doing and grabbed his arm. That will kill you. He met her eyes, then so be it. If one promise can stop a war, let it be worth something. But before he could finalize the overload, Maya's voice shouted over comms. Wait, Captain, the children are clear. Reinforcements inbound. Human fleet detected at edge of the system. Someone at Earth finally woke up. Evan froze, a laugh almost breaking through the exhaustion. About time. He disengaged the reactor link and switched to manual targeting, guiding the skiff's rail cannon toward the carrier. The weapon was small compared to Keth's monster, but precision was a human strength. He aligned the shot through wind and lightning. The beam tore through the air, hitting the carrier's sensor array. Sparks cascaded across its hull. The great machine faltered, losing aim. Its torpedoes exploded prematurely in a flash that lit the horizon like sunrise. Silence fell over the sea. Only the crackle of burning waves remained. Leary sank to her knees beside him. Tears in her eyes, he smiled faintly, exhausted but alive. Around them, the rescued children stared at the stars through the rising smoke, unaware that they had just witnessed the first human victory of the Valak's war. In orbit, Varketh watched the feed and whispered, "So the human does bleed but still stands. Interesting. Prepare the next move. If he wants to play hero, we'll make him a villain." And on the burning sea below, as dawn broke through the ash, Evan Cole stood amid ruin and rescue, holding the small hand of a trembling child. His armor cracked, his breath ragged, his heart steady. He looked toward the horizon where the council fleet waited in cold silence, and whispered, "Come then, let's finish what you started." The storm had not ended. It had only begun to change shape, and in its heart, a single promise still burned brighter than any sun. The courtroom of stars felt colder than space itself. A vast hall of light suspended in the sky where truth was not spoken. It was judged by the cosmos. Evan stood at its center with Lyrie beside him, her hand steady even as her world trembled. Before them floated 3 witness stones, glowing faintly with the memory of every word they had spoken since the ceremony. The trial by stars had begun. The chamber was filled with silence and expectation. Nobles, soldiers, and council envoys lined the galleries, their faces hidden behind veils of light. At the head of the dais sat Varketh in ceremonial armor, his eyes gleaming like sharpened glass. He spoke with the smoothness of poison. "The law of vow has been abused. The council recognizes deception in the binding of the human soldier." He gestured toward Evan. The outsider exploited ancient customs to gain political advantage. Earth now stands to control a royal bloodline. The council cannot allow such manipulation. Evan's voice came low but firm. "I didn't come for power. I came because you attacked a world that couldn't fight back." Keth smiled thinly. "Noble words, but we judge actions, not sentiment. The law demands proof of true intent." Lyrie stepped forward, her voice quiet yet cutting through the hall like a blade. "His promise saved my life once. It saved my people again when he could have fled." "That is intent." Keth leaned back, unshaken. "A single act of heroism does not cleanse a lie. By law, we require 3 truths: intent, sacrifice, and future. Fail anyone and your vow dies. Your planet loses protection and partition proceeds." The witness stones brightened, echoing his declaration. Lyrie reached for Evan's hand, her eyes asking the question she could not voice. He answered with a faint squeeze. "We'll give them truth no matter the cost." The first proof was called the truth of intent. Priests summoned the record of his rescue years ago. Holograms flickered to life, showing a younger Evan carrying a child through fire. Lyrie's small voice echoed across the chamber. "You be my husband, so no one hurt me." The soldiers' laughter followed, and Evan's soft reply, "Sure thing, kid, when you grow up, I'll come back." The sound lingered, fragile and pure. The crowd murmured, some smiling at the innocence, others whispering that it meant nothing. Keth stood smirking, intent born from pity, not honor, a soldier comforting a frightened child. Evan's voice cut through. "I didn't know your laws then, but I knew fear. And I made her a promise because hope is the only thing that keeps a person standing in fire. If that's manipulation, then humanity itself is guilty." The chamber stilled, and one of the stones flared white. First truth acknowledged. The second proof began, the truth of sacrifice. Keth's tone darkened. "What has the human given for this vow? What has he lost?" Maya Ortiz stepped forward from the crowd, her uniform torn, eyes blazing. "He gave lives, mine included. He stayed on this world when orders demanded retreat. His command nearly court-martialed for defying the fleet's recall. The council's silence cost hundreds of his own soldiers. And still he stayed." Keth scowled. "Soldiers die. Every day, that is not sacrifice." Maya lifted her arm, the skin marked with faint burns. "Maybe not to you, but to us. Sacrifice is staying when you're told to run." Evan bowed his head slightly, voice quiet. "I lost friends. I lost the right to return home without shame. And I'd do it again." The second stone turned crimson, then white. Second truth acknowledged. Keth's smile vanished, his voice sharp as ice. "The final proof, the truth of future. The law demands they stake something of value. Something they cannot replace if they fail or lie. That thing is lost." Lyrie turned to him, eyes wet but unwavering. "I offer the crown's ocean rights for 10 cycles." The audience gasped. That was the lifeblood of her world. Keth laughed softly. "Generous, and you human." Evan's heart pounded. He looked at Lyrie. at the people who had watched him with equal hope and fear, then said, "I offer my command, my fleet codes, my rank. If this vow is false, I'll never serve under earth again." The chamber fell into silence. The stones hovered between them, humming like hearts. Then a voice broke through the stillness. Small but clear, I can prove them. Every head turned. From behind the guard stepped a young boy, barely 15, hair silver gray, eyes like Lyri's. The court gasped. Keth's face hardened. Impossible. The boy lifted a pendant from his neck. The symbol of the royal line. I was hidden when the pirates came. The human carried me from the village before the fires reached us. My sister thought I died, but his ship saved me. I am Terran, heir of Valix, and I am living proof that the human's promise was no lie. Lyri froze, tears spilling as she ran to him. Pulling him close, Evan felt a weight lift off his chest he hadn't realized he was carrying. The witness stones ignited all at once. Pure light flooding the hall, priest cried out. The chamber shook with sound like thunder and rain mixed. 3 truths fulfilled. The vow stands. Partition suspended. Keth's composure cracked for the first time. He slammed his hand against the dais. This changes nothing. Your human shield cannot hold forever. The council will not defy the law of power. But his voice was drowned by the roar of the crowd. Nobles rising in protest. Chanting the old word for freedom, Lyri turned to face him. Her brother beside her, her voice steady. You taught us that law can be twisted by fear. Now you'll learn that faith can be rebuilt by truth. Keth left the chamber in silence, his cloak trailing like shadow, and Evan watched him go, knowing this was not the end, only the pause before the storm returned. Lyri stood beside him, her hand finding his again. The glow of the witness stones reflected in their eyes. She whispered, "You've given us time, but he will come again." Evan nodded, and when he does, we'll be ready. Outside the chamber, the sky was no longer gold but deep blue, calm for the first time in weeks. The people below cheered as bells rang across the cities of Valix. The sound of a world breathing again. Evan looked up, feeling the weight of every choice, every scar, every word that had brought them here. Somewhere above, hidden among the stars, Keth was already plotting his next move. But for now, just for this fragile moment, a promise had held against the tide of lies. And in the silence between heartbeats, the universe itself seemed to whisper that truth once spoken never truly dies. The stars above the Valix system were bleeding light when the war returned. The peace from the trial had lasted barely a week. Then came whispers of fleets gathering beyond the nebula, signals half hidden behind magnetic storms. Evan stood on the command bridge of the HSS Valor, watching static-laced readings crawl across the screens. The enemy was there, waiting. Breathing in the dark, he could feel it. The crew moved in silence, their faces drawn tight by exhaustion and dread. Human destroyers and Valix cutters floated together in uneasy alliance. 2 civilizations stitched by one promise. Lyri stood at the tactical station, her silver hair caught in the dim blue glow, her voice steady as she traced the enemy's path. Keth's foundry is here deep inside the black nebula. He's using its radiation to hide the fleet. Maya glanced at the readings and muttered, "That's suicide. Nothing with sensors can see in there." Evan answered quietly, "Then we don't use sensors, we use instinct." The nebula filled the viewport, a vast storm of darkness veined with red light. It looked alive, breathing, whispering, the kind of place where ships vanished and were never spoken of again. Evan knew Keth chose it for that reason. Not just to hide, but to frighten. Fear was his real weapon. Evan ordered the fleet to prepare. No signals, no transmissions. Full silence, human vessels will lead. Valix ships follow close behind. He turned to Lyri. "Your people know these currents better than any map. Guide us through?" She nodded once, no hesitation. When they entered the nebula, it was like sailing into a heartbeat. Every light dimmed, every sound became a pulse. The metal hulls groaned under unseen pressure. Radar screens died. Only faint flashes from the Valor's nose lamps cut through the dark. Then shadows moved, small at first, then swarming. Keth's drones, hundreds of them, silent and perfect. They came from all directions like the nebula itself had teeth. Evan gave the command, "Release the boys." Mechanical pods dropped from the destroyers, each carrying an old-fashioned beacon that used sound instead of light. Low rhythmic pings filled the void, a human trick from ancient seas using echoes instead of eyes. The drones reacted too late, confused, turning toward false signatures. Human and Valix ships weaved through the chaos like ghosts. The dark lit up with sudden bursts of fire, every explosion swallowed instantly by the fog. Lyri's voice came through the calm, her tone calm but burning with emotion. The lead vessel's hull is cracking. We need to cover them, Evan replied. I'll take point. He guided the Valor forward, engines howling. The ship tore through debris and flame. He could feel the vibrations through the deck. Like the heartbeat of a dying beast, Maya shouted. Multiple heat spikes ahead. That's the foundry. Evan stared at the readings. An entire structure the size of a continent. Machines birthing machines. Rivers of molten metal flowing in zero gravity. Then Keth's voice broke through the comms. Smooth and cruel, so the human keeps his word. Admirable, but pointless. You cannot stop what has already begun. The galaxy belongs to those who can shape it, not those who cling to promises, Evan answered coldly. You mistake mercy for weakness. Martial and law for fear, Keth laughed. Law is written by those who win. The first salvo struck. Massive phase mines detonating in the mist. The Valor reeled. Alarms screamed, sparks burst from consoles. The hull tore in 3 places, but the ship held. Evan gripped the command rail, firing countermeasures manually. He shouted over the noise, aim for the foundry spine, cripple its heart. The cannons flared again and again, tearing through armor and shadow. Lyrie's corvette broke formation to flank the foundry. Evan's voice thundered. Lyrie, fall back, you're too close. She ignored him. Her face lit by the glow of the reactor she was overloading. If we strike together, it will end faster. Her ship flew into the heart of the nebula, weaving between firestorms and collapsing structures. Her crew singing the Valak's prayer of the last light. Evan felt his chest tighten, a knot of fear twisting into something deeper. The Valor's last railgun charge fired. The shot ripped through the foundry's main core. Molten light poured out like the nebula itself was bleeding. The explosion rolled outward in silence, the shockwave invisible but immense. The human and Valak ships were flung like leaves in a hurricane. Evan hit the deck. The bridge darkened for a moment. There was nothing but the sound of metal dying. When the light returned, half the fleet was gone. The foundry was collapsing, its glow fading into black smoke. Evan pulled himself up, blood running down his temple. Maya's voice crackled through static. We've done it. The swarm is shutting down, but Lyrie's ship, it's gone. The word struck harder than any explosion. Evan stared at the shattered horizon of the nebula, his voice breaking. Get me her signal, anything. Maya shook her head, nothing but debris. He stood there silent, the bridge burning around him. Crew shouting orders he couldn't hear. His heart refusing the truth his eyes already saw. Lyrie had flown into the storm so he could live. The vow had come full circle. Her promise protecting his as his had once protected hers. Then faint, a signal flickered across the comm, a pulse. Rhythmic and slow, one the witness stones had once made. It repeated 3 times, then vanished. Evan's eyes widened. She was alive somewhere in the dark. He turned to his crew, voice raw but steady. Prepare search teams. We're not leaving without her. Outside, the nebula burned itself out, its light dying into silence. And from the ashes of the foundry, the galaxy watched a single human ship drift through the storm, carrying a promise stronger than war. The Council would call it defiance. The historians would call it madness, but in that moment, Evan Cole called it love, pure and unbroken, written not in law or stone, but in the fire between 2 souls who refused to surrender to destiny. And somewhere deep within the dying dark, a faint heartbeat answered him, waiting for the stars to rise again. The wreckage of the foundry drifted like a dying constellation, fragments glowing faintly against the endless black. The HSS Valor moved through the remains in silence, hull scarred, engines groaning, and every light flickering like a heartbeat fading away. The crew worked without words, their faces pale in the dim blue of emergency lamps, each man and woman haunted by the same thought. Was Lyrie truly gone? Evan stood at the forward viewport, his hands clenched on the rail, eyes locked on the void ahead. Debris drifted slowly past. Twisted metal, shattered drones, shards of broken stars. He searched every shadow, every signal echo, for the faint rhythm he had heard before. That soft pulse repeating like a whisper from the dark. It was the only proof he had that she might still be alive. Maya stepped beside him, her voice hushed. We've been searching for hours. The nebula's collapsing, radiation levels rising. He didn't move, then we keep looking. Outside, the dark shifted, colors bleeding through smoke. Sudden bursts of light flickered at the edge of sensors. Faint and rhythmic again, 3 slow pulses. Evan's breath caught. That's her. He turned sharply. Helm, follow that signal. Power to the forward thrusters. The Valor lurched into motion, engines roaring back to life. Through the viewport, the light grew stronger, golden and trembling, hidden deep within a swirl of red mist. A small corvette lay broken but intact, its hull cracked. but still breathing light from its engines, Larry's ship. The rescue teams launched before the Valor even stopped, armored divers gliding through the ash and fire. They cut through the twisted wreckage, calling out over comms. Faint responses came. One, then two, then silence, then a voice. Quiet, weak, but alive. This is Princess Leary of Valix. Requesting extraction, Evan closed his eyes. For a moment, his whole body seemed to exhale the pain of waiting. When they brought her aboard, she was pale, her gown torn, her hair streaked with ash, yet her eyes were the same, calm, luminous, and burning with life. The medics tried to pull Evan away, but she reached out a trembling hand, fingers brushing his sleeve. You came back. He smiled faintly. I told you, a promise is forever. Her lips curved just enough to be called a smile, but her voice broke as she whispered, The others. He shook his head softly. We saved who we could, and because of you, this world still breathes. Later, when the doctors cleared the deck, Evan stood beside her in the quiet of the med bay. Outside the viewport, the nebula's glow faded into the deep blue of normal space. The human fleet and Valix cutters regrouped, their ships battered but still standing. Leary turned her head to him, her voice low. Keith will not stop. He will return to the Council and twist this victory into defiance. They will call us rebels. Evan nodded slowly. Then we'll show them what rebellion looks like when it's made of mercy. And then the message came, intercepted through a dozen encrypted channels. Barketh's fleet had regrouped near Valix orbit. His voice filled the bridge once again. Cold and smooth, the human is alive. The princess lives, perfect. Now the galaxy will see how their defiance ends. Bring me Valix, burn their oceans. Make the vow their tomb, the Valor turned toward home. Its remaining thrusters burning white against the black as they neared the system. They saw it. The Council's massive armada encircling Valix. 1,000 ships gleaming in perfect order, their formation a cage of light. The air on the bridge felt heavy, the crew waiting for the command that might be their last. Evan stood tall at the center, voice calm, open channel to all ships. His image flickered onto every human in Valix display. This is Captain Evan Cole, Terran Expeditionary Corps. Under Treaty of the Law of Destiny, Valix stands as a free world under my protection. Any act of aggression will be treated as war against Earth. Keth's face appeared on the main screen, smirking. Then you declare war on the Council, human. Do you really think your dying fleet can fight the will of the galaxy? Evan looked straight into his eyes. No, but we'll fight for something the galaxy forgot. Honor, Keith laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. Then die with it. His ships moved first, lines of light tearing through the void. The first volley hit the Valor's shields. The bridge shook, alarms screamed, but Evan's voice was steady. Return fire, all batteries, defend the planet. The battle turned the sky into a storm of light. Missiles streaked past shattered moons. Plasma trails cut through the night. The human fleet fought with brutal precision. The Valix cutters moved like dancers beside them. Every hit answering the vow they had sworn together. One world, one promise, one stand. Leary appeared on the bridge again, ignoring the medic's protests. She took the comm beside him and broadcast to every ship. This is Princess Leary of Valix, daughter of the fallen. Sister of the lost, we will not kneel. She looked at Evan and added softly, Not while he stands with us. Her words carried across the comms, echoed by 1,000 voices. Even among the enemy fleets, some hesitated. Some lowered their guns, and in that heartbeat of doubt, Maya triggered the transmission Evan had prepared, Keth's own recorded orders, his voice commanding the slaughter of civilians. The proof of his crimes filled every council channel. Silence followed, then chaos. The fleets turned on each other. Discipline broken, belief shattered. Keth's image vanished from the screen, replaced by static. The Valor's final shots burned through his flagship, tearing its heart apart. The explosion bloomed across the sky like dawn, and for the first time in years, Valix's twin suns rose without shadow. When the smoke cleared, Evan stood on the observation deck. Leary beside him, her hand resting over his. The stars reflected in her eyes like tears that wouldn't fall. He whispered, It's over. She shook her head gently. No, this is the beginning. The galaxy will change, one vow at a time. The fleet drifted in the silence that follows victory. A silence not of death, but of breath finally taken. Evan looked toward the horizon where light broke over the planet's curve. His voice soft, we were never meant to rule them, only remind them what it means to keep a promise. And as the ships turned homeward, the witness stones aboard the Valor glowed one last time, recording the moment for all eternity. Two figures standing together before the newborn light, a a soldier and a princess bound by destiny, their vow written not in law or metal, but in the stars themselves.